Hey, welcome back to the channel, folks. If you're new here, welcome. Glad to have you. If you don't mind hitting that subscribe and that bell, sure would appreciate it. Help Geezer out. Anyway, I just got the Crush back from the shop. Another hot day in Florida. And I had the most amazing upgrade done. I just finished taking it for a run. I'm going to take it out a little bit later as well, maybe show you guys how it rides. But stick around, let me tell you what I did. So when I was up in Sturgis and, well, Wyoming too, Black Hills in general, you know, I'm kind of a fan of the big sweeping curves up there. And when you're on Interstate 90, it's also an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit. And I noticed the front end was not as planted as I wanted it to be. And I knew I was going to do something with it, but I waited until I got close to when I had to do the forks anyway and change the oil. But I decided to get the cartridges from Progressive. Now, I'm not selling any kind of shocks here from any certain company. I mean, Legend's a great company. And Progressive I like. They're up there, probably not as good as some. I think Wilbur's a really good name. But there's quite a few out there. But they all seem to do the same kind of thing on the front shocks. Now I did lower this bike too because I am 5'8" and I need to feel more planted. And lowering it an inch really did that for me. And you can buy the Progressive shocks an inch lower, so I did that, and I did the rear end too. You don't want to lower the bike unless you do both. You don't want to change the geometry, you just want it to be the same, you want it to feel the same, just more planted. Now I did notice when I was up there taking those big sweeping curves, well, the front end was just not right. Those springs, you know, Harley hasn't changed that design since, I don't know, the 30s and the 40s. They're still doing the same thing when motorcycles weren't doing past 45 miles an hour. You know, and they had a pretty rough roads, sometimes dirt roads. And maybe that they had a purpose back then, but they don't have a purpose now. Not if you're trying to get out there and maybe run some highway, maybe do some of those long sweeping curves. Which brings me to another point. You guys who bought like the Road Glide STs and you're thinking you've got a sport touring bike, I would think twice, because those shocks on that motorcycle are not any different or any better than what I had originally on this one. It's the same old spring thing. You take that bike and you start trying to take it up to the tail of the dragon, you may end up as a statistic instead of having a good time. You have to change that front end if you want to like ride hard or if you just want to be stable. The first thing I noticed with these, there's none of this bounce in the front end. You know, sometimes when I take Mrs. Geezer out, I'll stick her on the back, and we'd come to a stop, and you just kind of feel this, and it just, when you got some extra weight on the bike, it just not right. It doesn't feel good. So I took this thing out, and the first thing I did when I came back down is I hit the brakes, and it just sat down. There was none of this going on. None of it at all. Now, because I lowered it, you know, I can't quite lean like I used to. You know, I learned how to lay my bike down around corners up in Colorado, so I kind of have to back off of that a little. Not a whole lot, but probably a half inch or so. But these shocks made a huge difference. When I came home on the interstate, I was able to change lanes, and that bike was just stable. I love this front end. And I'll show a picture of the shock that I did buy. And I have the 944 Progressives in the rear, so I just wanted to keep it all Progressive. And the rear ones are inverted. So check with who's ever doing your shocks that you definitely invert them and put the adjuster down at the bottom. This is a new bike. It handles like it's brand new. It handles like an actual sport touring bike, and you won't find your STs handling like that. You need to change those front shocks if you think you're going to do those corners anywhere. So I've got some other footage I'm going to put up. I'll probably show the comparison between what it used to be, taking a handful of that front brake, and what it is now. See if I can dig up that footage. And I'm probably going to go for a ride and show you guys just a little bit of how this thing handles. Well, you can probably see that she sits a little bit different. I'm wearing my full face this morning so that you get a perspective of what it's like to ride it. I don't usually do full face, but sometimes I do. But you can see it does sit different. Let's just take her for a ride here. Man, I love the center of gravity on this thing now. Hopefully this camera on the helmet will work better. So yesterday I did have life get in the way. Not the wife, just life in general. Had some things to do, so. But it's cooler this morning anyway, so it's a better time to do it. And look, these videos I do are just my opinion. I'm not a mechanic, I'm not an expert. This U-turn might be a little rough, I don't know. Not that much difference. So I'm just going to grab a handful of brake here. I want you to notice how even it is. Stable. And really, this lower center of gravity, because I steer with the lower half of my body, really. The lower center of gravity just makes it a lot easier. I think I'll go down here. There's some traffic circles down here. I might try them out. I don't know if you can see this, but there's just no diving in that front end. It just feels great. Like I said, I'm not a mechanic. I'm just giving you my personal impressions of my upgrades. And to me, it's not all about power and speed. If you cannot control your motorcycle and you're not good in the corners, if you can't control the bike, all the power in the world is unnecessary. It's just not going to do you any good. You'll just kill yourself. You know, those sport bikes and the other bikes that were meant for that speed, they match the suspension to their power. You don't think an R1 and an H2 have perfectly tuned suspensions with speed? Well, think again, they spend a lot of time on those. Just adding horsepower to
your motorcycle does not make a touring bike. A sport touring bike, I should say. And I don't like to call this thing a performance bagger. I don't use it as that. But it does have performance. And I'm not one for tight curves, tail of the dragon, that kind of thing. And I've done other roads that are even as challenging as the tail of the dragon out in Colorado. Hairpin curves, but it's not really my thing. And up here in a second, I'm going to try to find those traffic circles. Oh, these guys are making their own U-turn. Welcome to Florida. The U-turn is just 300 feet up this way. I guess that's not good enough. There we go. Great. I didn't lean as much as I normally would, but that's enough. Alright. I just thought I would show you what a quick ride was like. I'm going to take this thing out this weekend. This is just like a different motorcycle. I don't even know how to explain it. But my confidence level is now through the roof. And it just handles so much differently. It's much more responsive. It just is. Anyway, I want to get back to the house, and I got a little work to do.